Somebody get that black homeless man away from my dog before he kills him. Jack Reaper. Sullivan roared as he shoved Isaiah Brooks backward with both hands, sending the worn shopping cart crashing onto the pavement. Rusted cans, threadbare blankets, and a faded family photograph scattered across the highway, while nearly 200 Hell's Angels bikers surrounded the homeless black man with roaring engines. You really expect me to believe a homeless black guy like you was trying to help Ranger? Jack sneered, jabbing a gloved finger inches from Isaiah's face. Men like you don't rescue expensive dogs, you look for a reward. He glanced at the torn backpack lying beside Isaiah and laughed. Look at yourself. You can't even afford a roof over your head. What could a black drifter possibly know about loyalty? The crowd chuckled. Jack wasn't finished. I've buried brothers who lived with more honor than you'll ever earn. If Ranger hadn't escaped, I'd swear you were dragging him off to sell him. Several bikers cracked their knuckles and stepped closer. One grabbed Isaiah by his ripped jacket. Another reached for the trembling German shepherd curled against his chest. Isaiah never resisted. Blood trickled down his forehead from the moment he had thrown himself into traffic. His voice remained calm. I didn't save him because he was yours, Isaiah said softly. I saved him because he was terrified. Jack smirked until Ranger suddenly broke free, ran straight back to Isaiah, and gently licked the blood from his trembling hand. The laughter vanished. Every engine went silent. Then Jack noticed something hanging from Ranger's collar. His expression froze. If you've ever wondered whether one act of kindness can rewrite an entire life, don't leave now. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your city in the comments below. And if stories about courage, justice, and unforgettable second chances move you, subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. Good to have you here. The best directions I've ever gotten came from someone who couldn't read a map either. Let's follow them. 3 days before 200 bikers surrounded him on that highway, Isaiah Brooks woke up beneath the rusted roof of an abandoned train station on the south side of St. Louis. The first thing he heard was rain. The second thing he heard was a child crying. Isaiah slowly opened his eyes and looked toward the corner of the old building. A young boy named Marcus was sitting beside his exhausted mother, holding a torn blanket over her shoulders, while water dripped through the broken ceiling. Isaiah had only one blanket left, the same blanket he used every night. But without saying a word, he folded it and handed it to them. Your mother needs it more than I do, Isaiah whispered. The boy looked confused. But you're cold too. Isaiah gave a small smile. I've survived colder nights than this. That was the kind of man Isaiah Brooks had always been. A man who had lost almost everything but somehow refused to lose his humanity. 5 years earlier, Isaiah had lived in a completely different world. He wore clean suits instead of worn jackets. He drove to engineering meetings instead of searching through trash bins for recyclable cans. He had once been respected as one of the most talented mechanical engineers in Missouri. His designs had helped strengthen industrial bridges across the state. His name had appeared in newspapers. His colleagues had called him a genius. But life had a way of taking things away one piece at a time. First came the accident. Then came the hospital bills. Then came the death of his wife Angela. And finally, the silence from the one person he loved most, his daughter Olivia. After Angela passed away, Isaiah couldn't bring himself to return to the man he used to be. Every room in his house reminded him of her. Every morning without her felt heavier than the last. One day, he simply left. He didn't run away because he was weak. He left because he didn't know how to carry the pain anymore. Years passed. The world forgot Isaiah Brooks, but Isaiah never forgot how to help people. Every morning he walked through the city pushing his old shopping cart. Inside were a few clothes, some tools, and a small notebook filled with sketches from his engineering days. That notebook was the last connection to the person he used to be. Most people who saw him didn't see a brilliant engineer. They saw a homeless man, and they treated him accordingly. That afternoon, Isaiah walked into a small grocery store to buy a bottle of water. He counted the coins in his hand carefully. 27 cents. That was all he had. The cashier looked at the coins, then looked at Isaiah's torn jacket. "You're short," she said coldly. Isaiah lowered his eyes. "I know. I apologize. I can put it back." Before he could turn away, a security guard approached. "Hold on." Isaiah stopped. The guard stared at him. "We've had problems with people like you coming in here." Isaiah frowned. "People like me." The guard didn't answer. He simply grabbed the bottle from Isaiah's hand. "Just leave." Several customers watched. Some whispered. One woman moved her purse closer. Isaiah felt that familiar pain again. Not physical pain. Something deeper. The pain of being judged before anyone knew his story. He quietly walked outside. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He had learned that sometimes people who already decided who you were would never listen to who you actually were. Outside the store, Isaiah noticed an elderly man struggling with several bags. Without hesitation, he helped carry them across the parking lot. The man looked surprised. "You don't have to do that." Isaiah smiled. "Someone helped me once when I needed it." The old man looked at Isaiah carefully. "You know, most people who have nothing still worry about losing something." Isaiah looked down at his worn shoes. "I guess I still have my choice. Choice. To be kind or not." The old man smiled sadly. "Don't let this world convince you that kindness is weakness." Isaiah carried those words with him, because he needed them more than he realized. Later that evening, Isaiah walked toward the abandoned industrial area where he and several other homeless residents stayed. But something felt different. There were unfamiliar trucks parked nearby. Men in expensive jackets were measuring the land. At the center stood Logan Pierce, the owner of Pierce Development, a powerful businessman known for buying old neighborhoods and transforming them into luxury properties. Isaiah had heard rumors about him. Logan wanted this land, not to help the people living there, to erase them. Logan looked around at the tents, blankets, and temporary shelters. His expression showed disgust. "This place is an eyesore," he said. One of his employees nodded. "We can have everyone removed within a week." Isaiah stepped forward. "These people live here." Logan turned. For a moment he looked confused. Then he laughed. "You..." Isaiah said nothing. Logan walked closer. "You look like someone who needs help yourself. Why are you pretending to speak for anyone?" The employees laughed quietly. Isaiah remained calm. "They are human beings." Logan smiled. "Everyone says that until money gets involved." Isaiah looked directly into his eyes. "And some people forget that money doesn't make them better than others." The smile disappeared from Logan's face. For a second, something changed. Like he recognized Isaiah. But it vanished quickly. "You should worry less about other people and more about finding somewhere to sleep tonight." The words hit harder than Logan realized, because Isaiah had heard versions of them many times before. But he refused to let another person's cruelty decide his value. That night, as rain poured over the abandoned industrial area, Isaiah sat beneath a broken shelter and opened his old notebook. He traced the faded sketches of machines he had designed years ago. Then he heard something, a faint sound, a desperate whimper. Isaiah lifted his head. At first he thought he imagined it. Then he heard it again. A dog, somewhere in the darkness, in pain. Without hesitation, Isaiah stood up. He grabbed his small flashlight and walked toward the sound. He didn't know that the animal he was about to save belonged to the most feared biker leader in Missouri. He didn't know that this single choice would put him against one of the most powerful men in the city. And he definitely didn't know that the world was about to learn the truth about Isaiah Brooks. Because sometimes the person everyone ignores is the person who has been carrying the greatest story all along. The sound grew louder with every step Isaiah Brooks took into the darkness. A weak whimper, then a desperate scratch against metal. The abandoned industrial yard was almost completely empty. The old factories surrounding the area had been closed for years, leaving behind broken fences, rusted machines, and forgotten corners where people rarely went. But Isaiah had always noticed things others ignored. A person sleeping under a bridge, a neighbor going hungry, an animal crying for help. He followed the sound until his flashlight stopped on an old drainage tunnel beneath a collapsed section of concrete. Inside, two frightened eyes reflected back at him. A German shepherd. The dog was trapped between broken metal bars and a pile of fallen debris. One of its back legs was caught, and every attempt to move only made it cry out louder. Isaiah immediately dropped to his knees. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dog growled weakly at first. Not because it was aggressive, because it was afraid. Isaiah understood fear better than most people. Slowly, he reached into his worn backpack and pulled out the few tools he still carried from his engineering days. A small wrench, a piece of wire, a flashlight with a cracked handle. Most people saw an old homeless man's belongings. Isaiah saw tools that could still save something. He examined the damaged metal carefully. The average person would have tried to pull the dog free. Isaiah knew better. One wrong movement could break the animal's leg. So he worked slowly, patiently. For nearly 30 minutes, Isaiah bent the metal piece by piece until there was finally enough space. The dog immediately tried to stand, but its injured leg collapsed. Isaiah caught it before it hit the ground. "It's okay," he said softly. The dog looked at him, and for the first time that night, the fear disappeared from its eyes. Isaiah removed his own jacket and wrapped it around the animal. It was the only warm thing he owned, but he didn't hesitate. He lifted the dog carefully and carried it out of the tunnel. The rain had become heavier. The cold water soaked through his clothes, but Isaiah didn't care. He only cared about getting the dog somewhere safe. He carried the German shepherd back toward his shelter and used the last few dollars he had saved to buy medical supplies from a small late-night pharmacy. The cashier looked surprised. You know this medicine isn't cheap." Isaiah looked down at the injured dog lying beside him. "I know." "Is it yours?" Isaiah shook his head. "No." The cashier frowned. "Then why are you paying for it?" Isaiah gently touched the dog's head. "Because he needs it." The cashier stared at him for a moment. She had seen many people spend their last dollar on themselves. She had rarely seen someone spend their last dollar on a stranger, even a four-legged one. After treating the wound as best as he could, Isaiah sat beside the dog through the night. He didn't sleep. Every time the dog moved, Isaiah checked on him. Around sunrise, the German shepherd slowly lifted his head. Isaiah noticed a small metal tag hanging from the collar, but the dirt covering it made the words impossible to read. He wiped it carefully. The name appeared. Ranger. Isaiah smiled. That's a strong name. He didn't know that name was recognized across the entire city. He didn't know Ranger belonged to Jack Reaper Sullivan, the legendary leader of the St. Louis Hells Angels. And he definitely didn't know that hundreds of people were already searching for the missing dog. By morning, the story had begun spreading. A powerful biker leader's dog had disappeared during a charity ride the previous evening. Jack Sullivan had stopped everything. Every member of his chapter was looking. Ranger wasn't just a pet. He was family. Years earlier, the dog had saved Jack's life during a violent accident on a mountain road. Since then, Jack had treated Ranger like a brother. When the search team finally tracked the dog's location, they followed the signal toward the industrial area. And that's when they saw Isaiah, a homeless black man, sitting beside their leader's dog. The first reaction wasn't gratitude. It was suspicion. Two motorcycles stopped suddenly in front of Isaiah's shelter. Then more arrived. The sound of engines filled the street. Isaiah slowly stood. He saw the leather jackets, the serious faces, the anger. One biker stepped forward. "Where did you get that dog?" Isaiah looked at Ranger. "He was trapped. I found him hurt." The biker's eyes narrowed. "You expect us to believe that?" Isaiah stayed calm. "Because it's the truth." Another biker walked around him looking at the old blanket, the broken shopping cart, and the small shelter. "He's been living here." The first biker shook his head. "People will do anything for money." Isaiah felt the accusation before the words were even finished, but he didn't respond with anger. "I don't want anything from you." The bikers laughed. Then one pointed at Ranger. "That's a very expensive dog." Isaiah looked confused. "I didn't know." "And you expect us to believe you just found him?" Before Isaiah could answer, more motorcycles arrived. Dozens, then hundreds. At the center of the crowd was a massive black Harley. Jack Reaper Sullivan stepped off. His reputation entered the street before he did. People knew his name. They knew his power. They knew his anger. Jack walked toward Isaiah. His eyes moved from Ranger to the homeless man standing beside him. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Jack looked at Isaiah's torn jacket, the blood on his forehead, the medicine beside Ranger. Something didn't make sense. This wasn't the picture he expected. A thief wouldn't spend his last money saving someone else's dog. But pride kept Jack silent. "Tell me exactly what happened," he demanded. Isaiah looked directly at him. "I heard him crying. I went to help." Jack stared. "That's it," Isaiah nodded. "That's it." The crowd waited. Everyone expected Jack to explode. Instead, Ranger suddenly stood. Ignoring everyone around him, the injured dog slowly walked forward, straight toward Isaiah. Then he lowered his head against the man's hand. The entire street went quiet, because everyone saw something impossible. Ranger trusted the homeless stranger more than anyone else. But before Jack could understand what he was witnessing, one of his men noticed something near Isaiah's feet, a small metal object that had fallen from Ranger's collar. And the moment Jack saw it, his entire expression changed. The small metal object fell onto the wet pavement. For a moment, nobody moved. The bikers who had surrounded Isaiah Brooks only seconds earlier looked down at the object near Ranger's collar. Jack Reaper Sullivan slowly bent down and picked it up. It wasn't a normal tag. It was an old military-style metal plate with a faded engraving. Jack wiped away the dirt with his thumb. Then his eyes widened, because engraved on the back was a message that only a few people in the world knew about. Guardian Angel. The name wasn't just a phrase. It was a memory from 20 years ago. Jack looked back at Isaiah. The homeless man standing in front of him wasn't asking for money. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't even defending himself. He was simply standing there waiting for someone to believe the truth. Jack looked at Ranger. Then he looked at the medical supplies beside him. The torn jacket wrapped around the dog's injured body, the empty wallet lying beside Isaiah's old shopping cart. Everything started making sense. "You spent your last money on him?" Jack asked quietly. Isaiah nodded. "He needed help." One of the younger bikers shook his head. "Boss, that doesn't prove anything." Jack raised his hand. The biker immediately stopped talking. For years, people had feared Jack Sullivan because of his anger, but those closest to him knew something else. Jack respected actions more than words, and Isaiah's actions were impossible to ignore. Jack looked at Ranger. The German Shepherd had always been cautious around strangers. Even veterinarians struggled to calm him. But now he was standing beside Isaiah like he had known him forever. Jack slowly removed his gloves. "Who are you?" Isaiah looked surprised by the question. "Just someone who found your dog." Jack stared at him. "No." His voice became softer. "Someone who found my dog and gave him everything you had." Isaiah looked away. He didn't know how to respond, because for years, people had only asked him what he needed. They had rarely asked who he was. Before Jack could say anything else, Ranger suddenly walked toward Isaiah again. The dog placed his head against Isaiah's hand. A few bikers exchanged confused looks. Carlos Vega, one of Jack's younger members, lowered his voice. "I've never seen Ranger trust anyone that fast." Neither had Jack, and that bothered him. Not because it was impossible, because deep down he knew there had to be a reason. Jack stepped closer. "Where did you find him?" Isaiah explained everything: the sound in the darkness, the broken tunnel, the trapped metal, the way Ranger had been too scared to move. The bikers listened. The anger on their faces slowly disappeared, because they realized something. Isaiah hadn't rescued a wealthy man's dog. He had rescued a living creature that needed him. No reward, no attention, no expectation, just kindness. Jack looked around at his men. Everyone heard him. Nobody answered, because everyone understood. They had judged Isaiah before knowing anything about him, the same way many people in the city had done before. A few hours later, Jack brought Isaiah and Ranger to a nearby veterinary clinic. Isaiah almost refused. "I can't pay for this." Jack looked at him. "Did I ask you to?" Isaiah became silent. The veterinarian, Dr. Emily Foster, examined Ranger carefully. After several tests, she came back with good news. "The injuries are serious, but he'll recover." Jack released a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Isaiah smiled. That smile caught everyone's attention, because it wasn't the smile of someone expecting gratitude. It was the smile of someone who was simply happy another life was safe. Dr. Foster looked at Isaiah. "You know, most people who brought him here would be asking how much the reward is." Isaiah shook his head. "I don't need a reward." "Then what do you need?" Isaiah looked through the clinic window at the city outside. For a moment, his eyes became distant. "I just want people to stop looking at someone like me and deciding I don't matter." The room became quiet. Nobody had an answer. Later that evening, Jack offered Isaiah a large amount of money, enough to change his life. Isaiah pushed the envelope back. "I can't take that." Jack frowned. "Why? Because I didn't save Ranger to become rich." Jack studied him. "You know, most people would take it." Isaiah nodded. "Maybe they need it." He looked down. "But I need to know I did the right thing for the right reason." Those words stayed with Jack, because he had spent years surrounded by people who measured everything by power, money, respect, fear. And here was a man who had almost nothing yet somehow possessed something most people lost: honor. But while Isaiah's story was changing the hearts of those around him, someone else was watching. Across town, inside a luxury office overlooking downtown St. Louis, Logan Pierce watched a video on his computer. The footage showed Isaiah standing beside Ranger. The same homeless man Logan had insulted days earlier. The same man he believed was powerless. Logan's expression darkened. That man again. His assistant Brandon Cole looked confused. "Do you know him?" Logan leaned back. "No." Then he paused. "At least, I thought I didn't." The video continued playing. Isaiah's face appeared on the screen. For a brief second, something old and uncomfortable surfaced in Logan's memory. A name, a mistake, a past he thought he buried. "Find out everything about him," Logan ordered. Brandon nodded. "Why?" Logan looked toward the city. "Because people like Isaiah Brooks don't suddenly appear." He closed the laptop. "And if he becomes a hero, everyone might start asking questions about the past." Meanwhile, Isaiah sat quietly outside the clinic with Ranger beside him. For the first time in years, strangers weren't looking at him with suspicion. They were looking at him with respect. But Isaiah didn't realize something important. Saving Ranger had not only changed his future, it had awakened a secret someone powerful had spent years trying to keep hidden. The morning after Isaiah Brooks saved Ranger, the city of St. Louis woke up to a story nobody expected. A homeless man had saved the dog of one of the most feared biker leaders in Missouri. The video was everywhere. People shared the moment when Ranger walked back to Isaiah. They shared the moment when Jack Reaper Sullivan lowered his anger and realized the truth. For the first time in years, Isaiah Brooks wasn't invisible. People knew his name, but not everyone saw the story the same way. Inside the office of Pierce Development, Logan Pierce watched the viral video with a cold expression. His fingers tapped against the expensive wooden desk. "This is becoming a problem," he said. His assistant Brandon Cole looked confused. "A homeless man saving a dog?" Logan looked up. "No." He pointed at the screen. "Meet this man becoming someone people trust." Brandon didn't understand. "Why does that matter?" Logan stood and walked toward the window overlooking downtown. "Because people only listen when they believe someone has value." He paused. "And Isaiah Brooks is becoming valuable." The words carried a hidden meaning. A meaning Brandon didn't understand, but Logan did. Years ago, Isaiah had almost destroyed Logan's biggest opportunity, not intentionally, not through revenge, simply by telling the truth. And Logan had never forgiven him for that. Meanwhile, Isaiah's life began changing in small ways. Not dramatically, not overnight, but slowly. People who once ignored him now stopped to talk. A restaurant owner offered him a meal. A mechanic repaired his old shopping cart for free. A group of teenagers who used to laugh at him now greeted him with respect. But Isaiah still slept in the same place, still carried the same old backpack, still helped others before himself. When Jack visited him that afternoon, he found Isaiah giving his food to another homeless man. Jack watched silently. "You do that often?" Isaiah turned around. "Do what?" "Give away things you need." Isaiah smiled. Someone needed it more. Jack shook his head. "I've spent my whole life surrounded by people fighting to get more." He looked at Isaiah. "And you keep giving away what little you have." Isaiah sat down. "Maybe that's why I still have something." Jack didn't answer, because he understood. Isaiah wasn't talking about money. He was talking about character. But while Isaiah gained respect, Logan Pierce began attacking from the shadows. Within days, rumors started spreading online. A fake article appeared claiming Isaiah had intentionally found Ranger to receive a reward. Another claimed he had a history of criminal behavior. None of it was true, but lies spread faster than truth. Soon, some people who had praised Isaiah started questioning him. The same city that had celebrated him began doubting him. Jack was furious. "This is not an accident," he said. He threw the printed articles onto the table inside the biker clubhouse. "Someone is trying to destroy him." Duke Harris, Jack's second-in-command, looked at the documents. Who would go after a homeless man? Jack stared at the papers. Someone who is afraid of what that man knows. The sentence caught everyone's attention, because Jack had started noticing something. Every time someone tried to hurt Isaiah, Isaiah never defended himself. He simply kept moving forward. That made him dangerous. Not because he had power, because he had integrity. Later that week, Isaiah received another surprise. A city official arrived at the industrial area with a group of workers. They posted an official notice on the fence. The residents gathered around. What is happening? The official cleared his throat. This land has been approved for redevelopment. Everyone living here must leave within 7 days. The crowd became silent. 7 days. That was all they had. Isaiah stepped forward. Where are they supposed to go? The official avoided eye contact. That is not my department. Isaiah looked at the notice, then at the people around him. Families, elderly residents, people who had nowhere else. Jack arrived moments later and saw the paper. His expression changed. Pierce Development. He recognized the name. Everyone did. Logan Pierce was one of the richest developers in the city. Jack looked at Isaiah. Do you know him? Isaiah shook his head. No. But deep inside, something about the name felt familiar. That night, Isaiah sat alone beneath the broken shelter. The rain fell softly around him. He opened his old notebook. The pages were filled with engineering drawings, bridges, machines, safety systems, memories of a life he had lost. His fingers stopped on one page. A design he had created years ago. A design that had saved hundreds of lives. At the bottom of the page was a company logo. Pierce Development. Isaiah's breathing slowed. A memory began returning. A meeting. A heated argument. A man who refused to fix dangerous construction problems because it would cost millions. A man named Logan Pierce. Isaiah closed the notebook. For years he thought losing everything was just a tragedy. Now he wondered if someone had helped make it happen. The next morning, Logan made his move. A local news station arrived at the industrial area. Cameras pointed toward Isaiah. The reporter stood beside Logan. We are here today after concerns about a man with an unclear background influencing vulnerable residents. Isaiah looked shocked. Logan stepped forward. Nobody wants to hurt anyone, he said with a fake smile. But we must protect the community from people who take advantage of sympathy. The cameras turned toward Isaiah. The same man who had saved a life was now being painted as a threat. Jack watched the broadcast from the clubhouse. His fists tightened because he knew something was wrong, and he knew the battle had only begun. Isaiah stood silently as the cameras captured his face. For years, he had survived being ignored. Now he had to survive being attacked. But Logan Pierce didn't know one thing. The man he was trying to destroy wasn't just a homeless stranger. He was the only person who could expose the truth Logan had buried for years. The broadcast continued playing across televisions, phones, and computer screens throughout St. Louis. Logan Pierce stood in front of the cameras, pretending to protect the community. Isaiah Brooks stood quietly, once again being judged by people who knew nothing about him. But this time was different, because there were people watching who knew the truth. Inside the Hells Angels clubhouse, Jack Reaper Sullivan stared at the screen with anger burning in his eyes. "He saved my dog," Jack said. Duke Harris looked at him. "And now they're trying to destroy him." Jack slowly nodded. "Because someone is afraid of him." The words stayed in the room. Everyone knew Logan Pierce had money, power, connections. But none of that explained why he cared so much about a homeless man, unless Isaiah was not who everyone thought he was. The next morning, Jack decided to find out. He visited the industrial area where Isaiah stayed. The place looked different now. Members of the biker group had quietly brought supplies: food, blankets, water. They didn't announce it. They didn't want attention. They simply wanted to help. When Isaiah saw them, he shook his head. "You don't have to do this." Jack smiled slightly. "That's something you would say." Isaiah looked confused. "What do you mean?" Jack looked around. "You helped my dog when nobody was watching." He paused. "So now we're helping you." Isaiah lowered his eyes. For a moment he looked uncomfortable. Not because he didn't appreciate kindness, because he wasn't used to receiving it. While they were talking, Carlos Vega noticed something inside Isaiah's old notebook. A drawing, a detailed mechanical design. He picked it up carefully. "You made this." Isaiah immediately reached for it. "It's nothing." Carlos looked closer. "It doesn't look like nothing." Jack took the notebook. His expression changed. The drawings were extremely advanced. Not the work of someone with no training. These were the designs of someone who understood engineering at a professional level. "Isaiah," Jack said slowly. "Who were you?" The question created silence. Isaiah looked away. "I was nobody." Jack shook his head. "No." He looked at the notebook. "Nobody doesn't draw things like this." Isaiah didn't answer, because the truth was complicated and painful. Years ago, before Angela died, Isaiah had been part of a major engineering project, a bridge renovation project managed by Pierce Development. He had discovered serious safety problems. He warned Logan Pierce. He begged him to stop construction until the issues were fixed. But Logan refused. The repairs would cost too much money. Isaiah threatened to report him. 2 weeks later, Isaiah lost his job. Then came the lawsuits, the rumors, the financial collapse. Everything happened so quickly that Isaiah never had the strength to fight back. But he had kept the evidence. Somewhere. A place he had not visited in years. While Isaiah remained silent, Jack began investigating. He contacted people from Isaiah's past. One name kept appearing: Isaiah Brooks, former lead mechanical engineer, award winner, safety consultant, a man who had disappeared after exposing construction violations. Jack stared at the information on his computer. "This isn't a homeless man." Duke looked over his shoulder. "This is the man who saved thousands of people." Jack leaned back, and Logan Pierce knows it. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Ranger disappeared. For several terrifying hours, everyone searched. Isaiah was the most worried. Even though Ranger belonged to Jack, the dog had become important to him. "So he's been through enough," Isaiah said. Jack watched him. "You really care about him." Isaiah nodded. "He trusted me when nobody else did." Those words affected Jack more than he expected, because he understood exactly what Isaiah meant. Hours later, Ranger was found near the abandoned factory area, but he wasn't alone. The dog had been digging beneath an old pile of broken equipment. When Isaiah approached, he noticed something strange. A small metal box was partially buried in the dirt. Jack looked at it carefully. "What's that?" Isaiah stared. He recognized it immediately. His heart began beating faster. Years ago, after losing everything, Isaiah had hidden important documents inside a metal box. Documents he believed he would one day need. But he never returned. Until now. With trembling hands, Isaiah opened it. Inside were old engineering reports, photographs, construction documents, and one signed report. A report that could destroy Logan Pierce. Everyone became silent. Isaiah slowly turned the pages. His old signature was still there. His warnings, his calculations, his proof. Logan Pierce had known the bridge project was unsafe, and he had ignored it. Jack looked at the documents. This is what he was afraid of. Isaiah stared at the evidence. For years, he thought he had lost his career because of bad luck. Now he knew. Someone had deliberately buried him. But there was more. At the bottom of the box was a photograph. A young Isaiah, standing beside a little girl, Olivia, his daughter. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten message. Someday, I hope you know your father never stopped fighting for what was right. Isaiah's eyes filled with emotion. He had lost his career, his home, his family. But now, piece by piece, the truth was returning. Then Jack's phone rang. It was Mason Reed. His voice sounded urgent. Jack, you need to see this. What happened? Logan Pierce just announced the final eviction date. Jack frowned. When? Tomorrow morning. The room went quiet. Tomorrow. Logan was moving faster because he knew the truth was coming. Isaiah closed the metal box. For years he had stayed silent. He had accepted humiliation. He had accepted being forgotten. But now people who had no voice were depending on him. Jack looked at him. What are you going to do? Isaiah looked toward the people living around him. The families, the elderly, the ones Logan wanted to erase. Then he looked at the documents in his hands. For the first time in years, Isaiah Brooks stood tall. I'm going to tell the truth. But neither Isaiah nor Jack knew that Logan was already preparing his final move. A move designed to make sure Isaiah never reached the courtroom. The next morning arrived faster than anyone expected. Before sunrise, dozens of trucks appeared near the industrial area. Workers wearing Pierce Development uniforms stepped out carrying equipment. Behind them were security officers, and behind everyone stood Logan Pierce. He watched from a distance with a confident smile. To him, this was already over. Isaiah Brooks was just a homeless man with old papers, a man without money, without influence, without a voice. At least that was what Logan believed. Inside the small community of people living near the old factory, fear spread quickly. Families packed their few belongings. Elderly residents looked around helplessly. They had nowhere else to go. Isaiah walked between them, trying to calm everyone. We won't panic, he said. An older woman named Martha looked at him. Where will we go, Isaiah? He didn't have an easy answer, because the truth hurt. He didn't know, but he refused to let fear control them. We will find a way. From across the street, Logan watched. He almost laughed. The same man he once destroyed professionally was now trying to save people. It was almost amusing. Until he remembered the metal box. Until he remembered what Isaiah could reveal. Logan's expression hardened. Make sure he doesn't reach anyone important, he told Brandon Cole. Brandon looked uncomfortable. What do you mean? Logan stared at him. You know exactly what I mean. That afternoon, Isaiah prepared to meet city officials. Jack had arranged legal assistance. The documents from the metal box were being reviewed. For the first time in years, Isaiah felt like he might finally have a chance. But Logan moved first. A local news station received a new story. This time it was worse. The headline claimed Isaiah was manipulating the Hells Angels to intimidate the city. The article showed old photos of biker groups. It suggested Isaiah was using vulnerable people to create chaos. The truth didn't matter. Fear did, and Logan knew exactly how to create it. When Isaiah arrived downtown, people stared. Some whispered. Others stepped away. The same city that had started respecting him was beginning to doubt him again. Jack noticed. This is what he wants. Isaiah looked at him. Who? Logan. Jack's voice was serious. He can't defeat the truth, so he's trying to make people afraid of the person telling it. Isaiah looked at the crowd, then quietly said, "He's not the first person to judge me before knowing me." Jack became silent, because he realized something. Isaiah had been fighting this battle long before Logan returned. For years, the world had told him he was worthless, and every time Isaiah chose not to become bitter. Later that evening, Isaiah returned to the industrial area. The place was quieter than usual. Too quiet. He immediately noticed something was wrong. Smoke. A small fire was burning near one of the temporary shelters. People rushed outside. Water. Call someone. Isaiah ran toward the flames. Jack and several bikers arrived moments later. Without hesitation, they helped pull people away from danger. Carlos Vega ran into the burning area to rescue an elderly resident trapped inside. The roof above him collapsed. Jack shouted, "Carlos!" A heavy piece of wood struck Carlos's shoulder as he pushed the elderly man outside. He fell to the ground. The fire was finally controlled, but the damage was done. Several shelters were destroyed. People lost what little they had. Isaiah looked around at the destruction. His hands trembled, not from fear, from anger, because someone had done this intentionally, and everyone knew it. Jack looked at the burned area. This wasn't an accident. Isaiah said nothing. He didn't need to. The answer was already clear. That night, Carlos was treated at the hospital. His injury was serious, but not life-threatening. When Isaiah visited him, Carlos smiled. "You came." Isaiah looked confused. "Of course I came." Carlos laughed softly. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "When I first saw you, I thought you were just some guy looking for a reward." He shook his head. "Turns out you were the richest man here." Isaiah frowned. "I don't have anything." Carlos smiled. "You have something most people spend their whole lives trying to find." "What's that?" "Respect." Isaiah looked down. Those words stayed with him, but there was still one thing hurting him. His daughter, Olivia. The photograph from the metal box had reopened wounds he had buried for years. That same night, thousands of miles away, Olivia Brooks watched the news report about the eviction. She had seen her father's face, older, tired, but unmistakable. She froze. For years, she believed her father had abandoned her. She believed he left because he didn't care. But the man on the screen didn't look like someone who stopped caring. He looked like someone who had been fighting alone. Olivia searched through old family records. Then she found something. A letter her mother had kept hidden. A letter Isaiah had written before disappearing. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were only a few words. "I love you, Olivia. I never stopped trying to come home." Tears filled her eyes. She finally understood. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He had lost everything, including himself. The next morning, Olivia booked a flight to St. Louis. She didn't know what she would say. She didn't know if Isaiah would forgive her. But she knew one thing. She had to find him. Meanwhile, Logan Pierce prepared for the final confrontation. He had investigators, lawyers, influence, everything money could buy. But he underestimated one thing. A man who had already lost everything was no longer afraid of losing. Isaiah stood outside the damaged shelter holding the metal box of evidence. Jack stood beside him. "The hearing is tomorrow." Isaiah nodded. For years he had been silent. Tomorrow he would speak, and when he did, the entire city would learn who Logan Pierce really was. But Logan still had one final weapon. A secret he believed would destroy Isaiah before the truth came out. The morning of the hearing arrived with heavy clouds covering the sky above St. Louis. For most people, it was just another day. But for Isaiah Brooks, it was the day everything he had lost could finally be understood. For years, he had carried the weight of silence, the loss of his career, the loss of his home, the loss of his relationship with his daughter. Today, he was finally going to speak. Outside the city courthouse, cameras gathered. Reporters waited. People from the community stood nearby. Some came because they believed Isaiah. Others came because they wanted to see whether the rumors were true. Then the motorcycles arrived. One by one, then dozens, then hundreds. The sound echoed through the streets. 200 Hell's Angels members surrounded the courthouse entrance. But they weren't there to intimidate anyone. They were there to stand beside a man who had stood alone for too long. Jack Reaper Sullivan removed his helmet and walked toward Isaiah. "You ready?" Isaiah looked at the crowd, then at the courthouse doors. "I've been ready for years." Jack nodded. Then today, they finally listened. Inside the hearing room, Logan Pierce sat confidently beside his lawyers. His expensive suit, his calm expression, his perfect image. Everything about him suggested he believed he had already won. When Isaiah entered, Logan smiled, a smile filled with arrogance. "So this is what you brought," Logan said quietly. He looked toward the bikers outside. A crowd. Isaiah ignored him. Logan leaned closer. "You really think people will believe you?" Isaiah looked at him. "I don't need everyone to believe me." He paused. "I only need the truth to be heard." For the first time, Logan's expression changed. Only slightly, but enough. The hearing began. Logan's lawyers spoke first. They described Isaiah as an unstable man who had manipulated public sympathy. They showed old photos of Isaiah living on the streets. They used his suffering as evidence against him. "Mr. Brooks has no permanent residence," the lawyer said. "He has no current employment. He has no official position." The lawyer looked toward the judge. "Why should this court believe someone like him?" The room became silent. Isaiah felt those words, because he had heard them his entire life. Someone like him, as if his struggles erased his value. Then Logan's lawyer smiled. "We also have evidence that Mr. Brooks has a history of emotional instability." A document was placed on the table. Isaiah looked at it. His heart stopped. It was his old medical record from after Angela died. A private record. One Logan had no right to possess. The room reacted. Whispers spread. Logan watched confidently. He believed this was the final blow. But then Isaiah slowly stood. "That document is real." Everyone looked at him. Isaiah continued. "After my wife died, I struggled." His voice became quieter. "I lost someone I loved. I lost my direction." The room listened. But struggling doesn't make someone worthless. He looked directly at Logan, and pain does not erase the truth. Nobody spoke. Then Isaiah placed the metal box on the table. The entire room became focused. My past was used against me. He opened the box, but my past also contains the evidence. Logan's confidence disappeared. The first document was placed before the judge. Engineering reports, construction evaluations, safety warnings. Signed by Isaiah Brooks. The judge examined the papers. "What are these?" Isaiah answered. "Proof that Pierce Development ignored dangerous construction failures." Logan immediately stood. "This is irrelevant." The judge looked at him. "Sit down, Mr. Pierce." Logan slowly sat. Isaiah continued. "I reported these problems 20 years ago." He pointed toward the documents. "I warned that cutting costs would put lives at risk." The courtroom became silent. Then the door opened. Everyone turned. A young woman stood there. Isaiah froze. His hands began shaking. Olivia, his daughter, walked inside. The daughter he hadn't seen in years. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad." The room watched silently. Olivia walked forward. "I spent years believing you left me." She looked at Logan. "But I found the truth." She held another folder. "My mother kept these letters." She placed them on the table. "Letters my father wrote trying to contact me." Isaiah couldn't speak, because for years he believed he had lost his daughter forever. But she was standing there. The judge reviewed the letters, the timeline, the evidence. Everything started connecting. Then Olivia revealed something else. Mr. Pierce knew exactly what happened. Everyone looked at Logan. She continued, "My father wasn't fired because he failed." She looked toward the judge. "He was removed because he refused to approve unsafe construction." The room erupted with whispers. Logan's face changed. For the first time, the powerful businessman looked afraid. Then Jack stood from the audience. "I have something to add." The judge allowed him. Jack walked forward. "My name is Jack Sullivan." Everyone recognized him. "I was not here because Isaiah asked me to come." He looked at Isaiah. "I came because he saved someone I love without knowing who I was." Jack looked around the room. "He helped my dog when he had nothing." His voice became stronger. "And now I am here because someone with everything tried to destroy the man who showed more humanity than most people I know." The room was silent. Then more people stepped forward. Members of the community, residents from the industrial area, people Isaiah had helped, one after another. They told their stories, not about money, not about power, about kindness. Logan looked around. The same people he considered invisible were now the people exposing him. But the biggest shock was still coming, because hidden inside the metal box was one final piece of evidence. A recording. A conversation from 20 years ago. A conversation where Logan Pierce admitted he knew about the safety risks. The judge pressed play. Logan's own voice filled the courtroom. "We can't stop now. The cost is too high." Silence. Nobody moved. The truth was no longer a rumor. It was undeniable. Logan Pierce's empire began collapsing in front of everyone. But before the judge could make a decision, Logan looked toward his lawyer. And everyone noticed something. He wasn't angry anymore. He was desperate. Because he knew the evidence was enough to destroy him. And he knew Isaiah Brooks had just taken back the life Logan tried to steal. The courtroom remained completely silent after Logan Pierce's own voice filled the room. Nobody looked at Isaiah Brooks anymore as a homeless man. Nobody looked at him as someone without a future. They were looking at him as the person who had spent years trying to stop a disaster from happening. The recording continued. Logan's younger voice was clear. "We can't delay this project. Investors are already involved. Fixing the problems now will cost too much." Then another voice appeared, Isaiah's voice. "If we continue, people could get hurt." The recording ended. The silence afterward felt heavier than any argument. Judge Rebecca Holloway slowly removed her glasses and looked toward Logan. "Mr. Pierce, do you have an explanation for this?" Logan remained standing. For the first time that day, he had no confident answer. His lawyers whispered quickly. They searched for a way out. But there was nowhere left to hide. The evidence was no longer based on accusations. It was based on his own words. The judge reviewed the documents again. "The evidence presented today suggests intentional negligence, suppression of safety concerns, and a deliberate attempt to damage Mr. Brooks's professional reputation." Logan's face became pale. The man who had controlled businesses, influenced officials, and destroyed people's lives with money was finally facing something he couldn't buy his way out of. The truth. Isaiah stood quietly. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't smiling. Because this was never about revenge. It was about finally being heard. Olivia looked at her father from across the room. She saw something she hadn't seen in years. Peace. After the hearing paused, she walked toward him. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Olivia whispered, "I spent so many years angry at you." Isaiah looked down. "I know. I thought you left because you didn't care." His eyes filled with emotion. "I tried to come back." Olivia shook her head. "Why didn't I know?" Isaiah looked at the old letters. "Because someone made sure the truth never reached you." A painful silence passed between them. Then Olivia stepped forward and hugged him. Isaiah closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt like he was home. Outside the courthouse, the crowd watched as the news spread. Reporters surrounded Jack Sullivan. They expected comments about the biker group. They expected anger. Instead, Jack said something nobody expected. "Today wasn't about us." He looked toward the courthouse. It was about a man everyone ignored until they needed him. The statement quickly spread. People who had judged Isaiah began reconsidering everything. The security guard from the grocery store watched the news that evening. He remembered Isaiah quietly leaving after being humiliated. He remembered never asking his story. And for the first time, he felt ashamed. Across the city, others had similar reactions. The people who once looked away now saw the person they had failed to see. Meanwhile, Logan Pierce's world collapsed. Investigators searched Pierce development. Financial records were examined. Old construction files were reopened. The evidence revealed years of hidden violations. The bridge project wasn't the only one. Several developments had ignored safety concerns to increase profits. Logan's reputation disappeared almost overnight. The man who had called Isaiah worthless became the person everyone questioned. Within days, prosecutors announced multiple charges: fraud, evidence manipulation, endangerment, and an investigation into the destruction of Isaiah's career. But the most emotional moment came when Judge Holloway addressed Isaiah directly. "Mr. Brooks," Isaiah stood, "you lost years because people chose power over truth." She paused. But today, the record shows that you acted with courage when it was easier to stay silent." The judge looked at the room. "Your dignity was never taken from you. It was only ignored." Those words meant more to Isaiah than any award, because for years he believed the world had forgotten him. Now he understood. His value had never disappeared. Only people's ability to see it had. Several weeks later, the city reached a decision regarding the industrial land. The eviction order was canceled. Instead of luxury apartments, the area would become a community center, a place for job training, housing assistance, engineering education, a place built around the same values Isaiah had always carried. When Jack asked why Isaiah wanted to help the same people who had once ignored him, Isaiah gave a simple answer: because someone has to show people that losing everything doesn't mean they have nothing to offer. Jack smiled. That's why everyone followed you. Isaiah laughed softly. I never asked anyone to follow me. I know, Jack replied. That's why they did. The opening ceremony of the new center arrived months later. Hundreds gathered. Families, community leaders, bikers, former co-workers, and people whose lives Isaiah had touched without realizing it. Ranger walked beside Isaiah wearing a new collar, but the old metal tag remained attached, a reminder of the moment everything changed. Jack stood beside him. You know, Ranger chose you before any of us did. Isaiah smiled. Maybe he saw something I forgot. What? Isaiah looked around at the crowd. That I still mattered? The crowd applauded, but Isaiah wasn't thinking about applause. He was thinking about the night he found a frightened dog in the darkness. The night he had nothing. No money. No home. No idea what tomorrow would bring. Yet he still chose kindness. And that one choice changed everything. Because sometimes the person standing at the lowest point isn't waiting to be rescued. Sometimes they are the person who reminds everyone else what humanity looks like. But even after everything was revealed, Isaiah still had one final decision to make. A decision that would determine what his second chance would truly become. 6 months after the day the truth was revealed, the old industrial area of St. Louis looked completely different. The broken fences were gone. The abandoned buildings had been cleaned. The empty streets that once represented forgotten lives were now filled with people walking toward a place that gave them hope. The Isaiah Brooks Community Renewal Center stood proudly where the old factory buildings once existed. It was not built to remind people of what they had lost. It was built to show them what they could become. Inside the building were classrooms for job training, temporary housing offices, medical assistance programs, and workshops where people could learn valuable skills. But the most important room was a small engineering classroom near the entrance. On the wall was a simple message. Everyone deserves a second chance. Isaiah Brooks stood beneath those words every morning. Not as a former homeless man, not as a victim, but as someone who had survived, healed, and chosen to help others. His life had changed completely. But Isaiah never forgot where he came from. Every week he walked through the center and spoke with people who were facing the same struggles he once faced. People who felt invisible. People who believed the world had already decided their worth. And every time Isaiah told them the same thing. Your situation is not your identity. One afternoon, Jack Reaper Sullivan visited the center with dozens of Hell's Angels members. The sound of their motorcycles still attracted attention, but this time people weren't afraid. They knew why they were there. The same men who once surrounded Isaiah with suspicion now stood beside him with respect. Jack walked through the building and looked around. You really did it. Isaiah smiled. We did it. Jack shook his head. No. He looked at the people inside. You started it. For years, Jack had believed strength came from fear, from reputation, from making people step aside. But Isaiah had shown him something different. Real strength was protecting someone who couldn't protect themselves. Real power was using what you had to lift others. Jack looked at Ranger, who was lying peacefully near Isaiah's office. The German Shepherd was older now, slower, but still loyal. "You know," Jack said, "I still can't believe that dog changed everything." Isaiah smiled. "He didn't change everything." Jack looked confused. "What do you mean?" Isaiah looked around the center. He reminded people of something they already knew. "What's that? That kindness still matters." Meanwhile, Olivia had become a permanent part of Isaiah's life again. The years they lost could never be recovered, but they stopped letting the past control them. They built something new. They had dinner together every Sunday. They shared stories. They laughed about small things, and sometimes Olivia would still apologize for believing the worst about him. But Isaiah always stopped her. "You were hurt too," he would say. "We both lost years. The important thing is we found our way back." Olivia eventually helped design additional housing projects connected to the center. The daughter who once thought her father disappeared became the person helping him continue his mission. One evening, she stood beside Isaiah outside the building. The sun was setting over St. Louis. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you didn't save Ranger?" Isaiah thought about it. He thought about the night in the darkness, the cold rain, the fear, the loneliness. Then he smiled. "I think I would have still tried to help him." Olivia looked at him. "Even if you knew what would happen?" Isaiah nodded. "Because doing the right thing shouldn't depend on what you get back." Those words became the foundation of everything they built. Months later, Logan Pierce faced the consequences of his actions. His company was dissolved. His reputation was destroyed. The investigations revealed the full extent of his misconduct. The man who once believed money could erase the truth learned the one lesson he never expected. Truth does not need wealth to survive. It only needs someone brave enough to speak it. On the anniversary of the center's opening, hundreds gathered outside. Community members, workers, families, bikers, people whose lives had been touched by Isaiah's kindness. Jack stepped onto the stage. The crowd became quiet. "I have spent most of my life being judged by my appearance," Jack said. "People looked at my jacket, my bike, and my reputation." He looked toward Isaiah, but this man taught me something. He paused. The world often decides who someone is before they ever learn their story. The crowd listened. Isaiah had no home, no money, no power. Jack smiled, but he still had something more valuable than all of that. Character. The crowd applauded. Isaiah stood quietly, still uncomfortable with attention, still the same man who had given away his last blanket to someone who needed it more. Ranger walked beside him as the applause continued, the dog that started everything, the dog that brought strangers together, the dog that helped reveal a truth buried for years. Later that evening, Isaiah sat alone outside the center. The city lights reflected in the distance. For the first time in many years, he felt completely at peace. He had once believed his story ended when he lost everything. He was wrong. Sometimes losing everything removes the things that hide who you truly are. Sometimes the person the world ignores is the person who carries the greatest value. And sometimes one small act of kindness can travel farther than anyone could imagine. A homeless man saved a biker leader's dog. But in the end, that dog helped an entire community remember the power of compassion. Because dignity is not given by money, respect is not created by status, and a person's worth is never determined by what they have lost. It is determined by what they choose to give.
Life can take away possessions, opportunities, and comfort, but it can never take away the courage to do what is right. If Isaiah's story touched your heart, Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us what kindness means to you. And if you believe stories of hope, justice, and second chances matter, subscribe and join us for more unforgettable journeys.